So we expect that we'll be able to fill more than 60% of all those vacancies. And as CFO indicated, some are going to emerge at the bottom as a result of promotional opportunities, which is positive, except that from a recruitment point of view, it means repeating the same process internally. But we are hopeful that the bulk recruitment, and the bulk recruitment I'm referring to this 448, will come to an end with this financial year. In the new year, we expect that we will have normal, usual vacancies that come as a result of natural attrition, which has been below 5% in SABC historically. Thank you very much, Chair. I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you done, Group CEO?
Chair, I'll do the operational sustainability one. We can just move to that. Good morning, Chair and honourable members. The operational sustainability heat map is very much aligned with the successes that we have achieved with the transformation journey that we're on. And in terms of both the operating models we've put in, but also the good relationship that we have with the department as well. So you will see from the risks, the black coloured one is basically where we were 18 months ago, and the green coloured one is where we are right now as an organisation. So I'll just take it maybe from the top, and I'll be very brief on this. So you'll see from the recruiting, development, and retaining the right people, we've moved that basically from a high probability and major impact to a remote one, and still major impact if it were to occur. We have seen already that we were able to retain and attract good talent, and we really did well in terms of that. The DTH, we've seen the successes from the ASO project, so we're doing quite well on that, and that risk has been mitigated. Failure to implement digital modernization, that's also aligned with that, and we're going to market with our own OTT platform this month. From a regulatory point of view, and the support in terms of BDM policy, great engagement we have there. We all know where we are in terms of the review process that's happening over there. Failure to achieve the revenue projections. We've seen the slides in terms of despite the depressed economy and despite the impact of COVID, we have demonstrated an increase and a positive growth in terms of our revenue numbers. Number 7, this remains our single highest risk at the moment, and that is an aging environment that we have currently. So our infrastructure is old, it needs to be refreshed. And I'm not just talking from a physical side, I'm talking technology. And so we are aggressively addressing that. Right now, the core focus is keeping the lights on with our aged system till we're in the position where we will complete DR and high availability for all our core systems. Inadequate customer value propositions, I'll leave that to my colleague who will speak next, basically, and you'll see in terms of what we've done there to improve that side of our business. Failure to implement divisional turnaround plans. You've seen where we are with our enterprise turnaround plan. From a divisional point of view, we've done well in terms of doing that as well. Addressing the legacy governance issues, you've already seen the successes we've achieved there. Chair, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Reggie, who will take us through the sales component and revenue generation component of the slide. Reggie, over to you, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I'll speak to the sales and the revenue generation. The slide before you is an attempt to share with you our strategic thrust. What are some of the key building building blocks that we utilize in driving revenue. If I may start just on the right-hand side, the customers that we have, we had before the targeted operating model, we were very much a product-centric structure. We had built a structure based on products. So we would go to market based on a TV division and radio division. And I used to have a sales force just selling radio and a sales force just selling TV and so on. And that used to irritate customers. So the new thrust is in terms of target operating model, it was to combine the go-to-market so that you have one account executive looking after one customer, selling across the product range. So the slide is just showing you that we also, not only did we sell across, but also on that pyramid on the left, that's a threshold of TV sales in yellow, and on the right is a radio sales. So customers spending between 6 million, for instance, will be SMME. Corporate customers from 6 to 29 million from a TV perspective, and 3 to 9 million from a radio perspective with corporate. And finally, enterprise will be 30 million and above. And this was intended to ensure that we also treat customers appropriately based on who they are, because they're different customer profiles. It was not sufficient to just say we've got customers. We used to have just government and agency and business development. So we have refined and fine-tuned our model to be very directed, to be specific and intentional. So for instance, the SMME segment we developed in the process of different stages, but developed offers that speak to that segment because they have the least amount of resources internally, from research, strategy formulation. They also want to reach markets, but they don't have the infrastructure to help them. So our offering has to take that into consideration, and you have to simplify the manner in which you engage with them. There's thousands of them as well, so you've got to simplify engagement models. The enterprise segment, as a customer wants, places huge pressure on us to obviously extend every rand that they spend with us. The next slide, please. I don't know any further, but and then if you take the customer segmentation that we've done through Tom, what we then do is also make sure that our policies align to, obviously, from a strategy, a pricing strategy perspective and trading models perspective. So all of this has to dovetail to deliver particular service to a specific customer sets. So from a pricing perspective, if you look at the SMME, you've got to utilize an economy-based pricing strategy. Whilst your enterprise, it's more premium and contribution margin type engagements and so on. So you've got to tailor your solutions to the respective segments, because none of these customers are the same. They all require different things. We also have in the ecosystem agencies through which we work and partner with to deliver these products and solutions to our valued customers. There's a handful of customers that go direct with us that don't have, I'm talking big enterprise customers that don't have agencies, that have a full-on in-house infrastructure. So again, we treat them differently, but it was just to make sure that from a target operating model perspective, you've clustered your customers correctly, then you create offerings to suit their type of environments, and reduce nuisance, obviously, in just a spray and pray type approach. You hope that someone will bite something. So we're very targeted in the manner we do things in this dispensation. Next slide, please. From a TV license perspective, I thought I'd give you just also a high-level view of the strategic approach. TV license is fundamentally, as the CFO has outlined, it is a book it is a book-driven business. The strategic ability to mine the book, TV license success, fundamentally as there's a myriad of activities on the left, strategic imperatives that it is a book-driven business that we do, the ability to activate, to drive and mine the book. Ability to answer calls, ability to turn around correspondence within 7 days. And this has halved from 14 days in the last period. Those type of touch points are important. The ability to ensure that the ease of doing business with SABC, broadening the payment points, like online payments, very, very important. So those are the key drivers in this particular business. And then the different books that we have from a database perspective allows us then to also tailor somewhat our strategies depending on the age of the book and what we're dealing with. And then, of course, to the extreme right, we have the different, call it segments, channels through which we collect various services from business to households. Next slide, please. I think it's important also here as I conclude, just to acknowledge that it's been a very tough trading environment the first half of this year. Safe to say that even in those conditions, we've continued to place more spots on TV than the previous year. In fact, even better than pre-COVID period or dispensation. So there's been a significant uptake from that perspective. On the radio side, we still have opportunities that we are farming and growing and working on expanding, because that represents one of the growth points or growth nodes for us as well. So the trend analysis is a gradual increase. When you look at it in your cycle versus previous year, SABC actually grew, if you compare prior year for the 6 months, so we grew about 18% over this period. Yes, we were to claw back from COVID, but it's not a given that you'll still find money in the market when you claw back because the environment is dynamic. So I think that's an important point. And of course, from an outlook perspective going forward, it's our intended commitment to continue to chase revenue, take from out-of-home categories, take from print, take from our competitors to grow the SABC portfolio. Thank you.
Chair, our colleague Philly will now join.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the members of the committee for the opportunity, and to my GCO, the directors and the colleagues. I should preface the presentation by emphasizing that as lawmakers, it is very, very critical that we alert you of some of the legislative and regulatory challenges that the SABC has been faced with. But I think the most significant thing that I think I need to highlight at the beginning is that there are processes, fortunately by the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, which are intended to assist in this regard. So I think while we are outlining these problems as they are currently existing, it is also important to highlight that there are processes on the side. One of those critical is the white paper on policy, which is referred to as the white paper on audio and audiovisual content services, which the department has started with and is intended to address some of the most critical issues that are affecting the SABC. The second one is the legislative process, which the department has also started. And in this respect, this refers to the SABC bill, which they intend to make it the SABC Act, which will strictly be looking into the affairs of the SABC. So these processes, I think, let's bear that at the back of our mind as we discuss these issues. However, the processes are not yet finalized, and it's important for members of the committee to get a sense of what are the issues that we intend to really want them to assist us as lawmakers. And as the chair has already indicated at the beginning when you were introducing the SABC presentation, he made a reference to the mass carry as one of the regulations that has actually been haunting the SABC for some time, because this regulation has unfortunately allowed pay television to carry the SABC channels for free without payment, which was against the current existing law in terms of the ECA. What we are recommending in this instance is that the must carry provision, as it's popularly known, should be removed from the legislation so that the SABC can contract with anyone and negotiate commercial terms. So that is going to assist the SABC in terms of its financial viability to ensure that it's actually able to generate revenue from wherever that it contracts with through carriage agreements and so on. The other critical regulation, which is also debated and also in the white paper, is the sports regulations. I think members of the committee might be aware that there has been big issues around national sporting events, be it rugby, cricket, or any other so-called privileged sporting activities that have been on pay television, which are supposed to be accessed by members of the public. The most ordinary citizens that you represent in Parliament are not able to access these sporting events. And we've seen a good example with rugby in most instances. I think this is a good example where we are not able to broadcast some of these events for a simple reason that the regulations are not assisting us. What is happening is that there is a high commercialization of these sporting rights where we are not able to access them and they're being sold to us at premium price, which makes it very difficult for us to get them. But the most important thing here, Chair and members of the committee, is the issue of national sporting events. We're not referring to any commercial league or any private league, or we are referring to national sporting events where the South African flag is being flown by the teams and members of the public not being accessible to access those. That is something that should be a sore point to whoever really is advancing the interests of the members of the public. So we're saying the new legislation, the policy should actually remedy that so that members of the public can be able to access this through the SABC as a free-to-air and any other free-to-air, because they're supposed to be seeing their hero and heroines when they're performing national duty. And as such, we are saying the rights must be unbundled so that we can access. We're saying, these rights, as is seen in other jurisdictions, they can be, unbundled in such a way that we can access certain rights so that we're able to show South Africans what the national teams are doing. Next slide, please. Now, the other issue is the licensing framework. We are aware, all of us, that broadcasting has changed. We're no longer even going to be talking about broadcasting soon, but we'll be talking about audiovisual, given the merging of platforms and various ways in which broadcasting in the traditional sense has changed. So we're saying one of the critical issues here is that the licensing framework for the SABC should also be in line with the current changes in the digital multi-platform environment. And therefore, that is going to assist the SABC to be competitive, be sustainable, and be able to utilize its services to the fullest maximum. The other issue is the Dtt regulations. I'm sure you're aware that there's been debates about the spectrum and how broadcasters should be able to free the spectrum to the traditional telco operators, and so that the country is able to move forward. But wherever the system was saying, the regulations, as currently they stand, they are not assisting the SABC, given that if you don't use the spectrum that we have currently now, you may lose it. This has not in practice happened, but it's a risk because it's in the regulations. And we've been engaging also with the regulator to say, let that be removed from the regulations. Let us be allowed as the SABC to utilize the spectrum and to move, because you are aware that for some time DTT has been delayed, and therefore the regulation it stands, if applied, might prejudice the SABC. Next slide, please. Now, there is a whole issue of platform again, where the regulations actually obliges the SABC to largely use digital terrestrial spectrum. And we are saying, in the spirit of the current legislation, the ECA, and the spirit of the movements in technology, the SABC should not be dictated to in terms of whether how much of DTT or DTA should use. We're saying this split must be removed because we're moving into a technology neutral environment where we should be able to use any platform as the SABC. to make sure that South Africans are able to access our content and are able to deliver on our mandate. The same as we look at the public service mandate that the SABC have in terms of the current legislation, it is very broad, and it might end up putting us on our back foot when one does an audit of whether we have done everything that is in the charter. We're saying when the Broadcasting Act is reviewed now in terms of the bill, there should be priority mandate that the SABC should be able to do. It shouldn't be all the listed items which are too much expensive. The funding model, I think even the chair and the principals have referred to how the SABC currently is challenged when it comes to the funding model, because the SABC is largely dependent on commercial revenue, which is unhealthy for any public broadcaster in the world. We know how public broadcasters are funded through the state and through various other means. We are saying this over-dependence is risky, and we have seen it how it has impacted on the SABC. If the market jitters, the SABC will catch cold, and therefore we have no way of running our business from a commercial point of view if that is the dependence. So we're saying there should be a review in the legislation to ensure that the SABC is publicly funded through various means. And one of those, we're saying it should be through different national departments. We're aware that our mandate is such that we do health, for example, we do education, we do sports. So there are big stakeholders from government onto the SABC, such as your sports department, such as your health department, and such as our education department. Therefore, in their budget as our strategic partners, they should be able to allocate budget. We should come to the SABC in that symbiotic relationship where we're able to assist on national developmental goals, and at the same time, we're able to sustain the business. These are some of the activities that are not necessarily commercially attractive and will need to be funded through the national or treasury pairs or through public funding. And therefore, we're saying funding model of the SABC should be looked into, and rather than putting an overall figure and say the SABC needs 3 billion every year, this can be done through government departments investing on content with the SABC. Next slide, please. Furthermore, we're saying there is also an obligation of the SABC to extend our mandate beyond the borders, which means we are doing international broadcasting, and one of our services such as Channel Africa is doing that extensively. And we're saying, carrying out that mandate, there should be a ring-fenced funding, because this is not necessarily a commercially viable proposition that you are guaranteed to get any revenue out of it. But it is very strategic and important for the country that we find in terms of international relations that we are placed and we are able to make contribution, particularly to the African continent. Furthermore, when coming to unfunded mandate, we have a lot of national events. Obviously, as a public broadcaster, we do cover a lot of national events in our services, which really takes a lot in terms of our revenue or in terms of our budget, in terms of having to ensure that South Africans are able to access all these events of national importance. I mean, a clear, good example will be like your opening of parliament, your budget speech. I mean, I've seen, for example, many commissions that SABC is covering through its news platform. Those commissions are not necessarily financially attractive, but it is our mandate, we have to do it. But the cost of running that, it is such that it depletes the little revenue that the SABC is able to generate from the commercial market. And we're saying there should be that recognition in terms of the funding model, that there should be government funding, so that we do not at the end, which is the risk, we do not at the end find commercial broadcasters having to do public mandate. We have seen how possible it is, if you're not careful, that public broadcasting can be eroded because of lack of funding, because we're not able to do certain important events. Next slide, please. The other important challenge that we believe the courts have been able to resolve in terms of governing structure or the current governance structure is the judgment that actually was so seminal in making a determination around the separation of powers between the minister, the board, and the executive. We believe this should be not left out, should inform the amendments and the policy when we finally come up with an SABC Act. We believe that should actually underpin all the provisions that have to do with governance structure of the SABC. One other critical issue has been the divisions of the SABC. If you look at the Broadcasting Act, it has provided for two divisions, the Public Service Division and a Commercial Service Division. These divisions are not in any way assisting the SABC to become effective, to be viable, and to be flexible in running its business, because the SABC, from the onset, it was never conceived as a separate two entities. It is a single unitary organization which was intended to have divisions as the legislation put it later. However, we've realized how that has created financial difficulties, which unfortunately can lead to non-compliance in terms of this provision. So we're saying in terms of our proposal, and we've done this also to the broadcasting bill, a submission that we've done, also the submission that we've done to the white paper, that those divisions must be removed. We are a public broadcaster, we should remain as such. However, I'm mindful of the concerns that public money or funding that may be coming from the public payers should not be utilized for commercial activities. So we're quite aware about that. And we're saying those, for example, services or stations that actually have been running commercial business and have been licensed as such should actually be impeded from benefiting out of that. We're quite aware of that, and we're quite aware that it raises some competition issues. Next slide, please. Now, TV license fees. This is one of the most topical issues, as you might be aware. It did some media rounds, but what our position here is, we need to alert members that the definition of TV license fees in the legislation is very outdated, very archaic, is not in accord with the current technology developments. You do not access television traditionally as you used to be, because what the legislation provides is that you only pay TV license fee if you have a TV set. And you don't need a TV set today to access television content or what you call audiovisual content. You can access it from any other device, be it your laptop, be it your computer, be it your cell phone. Therefore, that definition as put in the law or in the Broadcasting Act should be reviewed, and we should now adopt a device-independent definition. It's about accessing public service content rather more than any other thing. It's not about what device are you having, whether you are watching television or you are using a certain device to access, because that is going to make life very difficult for anyone to be made accountable in terms of paying license fees. So we're saying, let us adopt a public media levy that is going to make everyone, because he or she has the potential to access television signal, should be able to pay. Next slide, please. Pay TV advertising. One of the critical issues that has actually affected the free-to-air television industry, so to speak, has been the failure of the provisions in the current legislation, which is the ECA. The legislation intended that there should be a limitation for pay TV or subscription television not to earn more advertising than its subscription revenue. And the intention has been very clear. It has been trying to create a balance so that free-to-air broadcasters are able to get a fair share of the advertising pie in the market. However, this over the years has proven to be a failure, and this needs to be reviewed. We have made submission to the white paper, and we are also happy about the recommendation in the white paper that ICASA, the regulator, has to come up with regulations that are going to assist to come up with regulations that actually can start leveling the playing field and ensuring that the free-to-air broadcasters are able to take advantage of or have a fair share of the advertising revenue. The other point is this whole issue about Centec and signal distribution. You might be aware, as members of the parliament, that there has been unhappiness by the SABC over Centec for various reasons. Centec, we know it, it has been historically the only main common carrier and the only main signal distributor. No Centec, 80% of broadcasts in this country will come to a standstill. However, we're saying that position should not be badly or unfairly used over a big entity such as the SABC. One of the issues we have is that the white paper seemed to have proposed that Centec should remain the only signal distributor for the SABC, which we believe is totally not consistent with the freedom of trade that the SABC has to exercise, which actually also limits the ability of the SABC to use any other signal distributor or any other entity that can make financial sense to the SABC, so that the business is run with efficiency and the business is run with the intent to be competitive in the market. Therefore, if you look at the position of Centec, you realize that Centec has been a monopoly when it comes to the analog transmission of television. It has been also a monopoly in terms of the signal distribution in general within the country. And I'm saying this does not help to entrench that monopoly, because it is not going to allow the SABC to be viable in terms of pricing. But the most critical one is the tariffs that Centec has actually been charging the SABC. One of our biggest issue, which has also been raised both with the regulator and has been taken to the Competition Commission, is the whole transparency about the tariffs that Centec is charging the SABC and how it arrives at that, the cut, or what you call the pricing of signal distribution. This is a sore point to the SABC, and as members, I think it's important that we take note of it, that it is not all hunky-dory between the SABC and Centec when it comes to, and interestingly, we're both the SOEs, and we should really be working so easily, nicely, smoothly to deliver for public good, because Centec is not a commercial entity with the private shareholders. We're all, meant to deliver public good. And we're saying this is a matter of urgency, that Centec's revenue, tariffs should be reviewed, and the East position should not be entrenched as a monopoly. Next slide, please. I think I was too much on the run. I've hit the dead end, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Unless there is anything, Board Chair, before I allow members to interact with the presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. There's nothing from my side. We're ready to engage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, that is the comprehensive presentation from the SABC. Like there was a request from Honorable Ngwenya to start, we'll recognize it. And let me also check other members who want to engage. Honorable Ngwenya, you can start while I'll be looking for the other members that want to engage on the presentation.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Honorable Chairperson, having listened to the presentation, I would like you to ask the following question on content. What is the progress to date about your recommendation to government to consolidate and strengthen funding mechanism for audio-visual content, as well as to implement the development of content hubs in all provinces? On carriage fees, Chair, I wanted to know whether the SABC has managed to generate enough revenue from carriage fees. If yes, to what extent have you managed to generate revenue from carriage fees? And if no, why not? The third question, Chair, on recapitalization. I wanted to check that whether the public broadcast has submitted a request for recapitalization to the National Treasury? If yes, can we get an update about the response of the National Treasury regarding your request for capitalization? The fourth question, Chairperson, is on TV license. I wanted to know how many households and business in the past financial year have paid their television license. If TV license is still your second source of review. The last question, Chairperson, is on audit outcome for 2020 and 2021 financial year. The SABC has received a qualified option with funding from Audit General. This is not acceptable, Chair. When will you receive a clean audit? And can we get an undertaking that your audit opinion shall improve at the end of this current financial year? Chair, I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to allow me to contribute in the meeting by asking questions which are in line with our oversight functions as members of Parliament. I may come back, Chairperson, for the second round of questions if there is a need. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Ngwenya. Honorable Nyambi.
Thank you, Chair. To Minister Group CEO and the team. Repeat what I said by Ngwenya, but I will ask my questions. Probably let me indicate that indeed there is a serious improvement from what was happening and what is happening currently. But be that as it may, as an advice to the team that is doing the presentation led by the Minister, TM, and the Group CEO, it will always assist for them when they come to us to have something that will be totally different in the way they are presenting it to us as the National Council of Provinces. I know that SABC has got a footprint in almost all these provinces that were representing in the NCOP. So it's going to be a very good thing for us to have a sense of the situation of these provinces that were representing and understand what SABC is doing. Of course, not be deprived of having an understanding of what is happening at national level, but also it will be good for a person like myself who's representing Mpumalanga to see the status of SABC in Mpumalanga, same with yourself in Limpopo, same with Mama in Gauteng. But be that as it may, Chair, the presentation, it's giving us, I'll start with the last one. The last part that is focusing on issues of legislation changes required for SABC to be self-sustainable. When are they going to have something that will give the time frame of all these important issues? Because to me, that's what is key to all what is presented today. And there's no way that we're going to be able to have them to be accountable if they don't give a time frame. And once you raise issues that we know that are a problem, that need some attention, but we don't get a sense that when are they going to be presented to us, what is failing them to have a time frame that will be clear that in terms of this one, this is the stage that we're in, these are the stumbling blocks, probably this is the intervention that you expect from us as members of parliament. And I find that to be missing in a very important slide that was believed. The second one, Chair, is the issue of the finding. There are some serious issues as raised by Umangwe, but the presenter said on this issue that were raised by AG, we are working on them. What is that working on them? Make me to understand so that I cannot have my own assumption that might be wrong, so that I can be able to give credit where it's due about what is being done, to be critical in a constructive manner where there's some gaps. The third one is the issue of moratorium vis-a-vis the issue of posts that are being advertised. I was lost along the way because from the presentation, there's a moratorium, but at the same time, there are people that are joining the department. So how is this thing of moratorium being done so that all of us were reading from the same page and we are actually doing the correct oversight in what is being presented to us? Then the issue of vacancies and the optimal performance of SABC. I'm of the view, Chair, that there's no way that you can have critical posts where then there are some vacancies. But there's a contradiction. Like it's said, you don't have, you have your critical post. But as I said, as somebody coming from Mpumalanga, I know that for almost a year, there's no business manager in Mpumalanga. It's a Hollywood. It's somebody who's acting Mvango, to be precise. And not only that, a number of posts in that structure in Mpumalanga. And I'm not convinced that you can have a structure that can have people that are acting that will be performing at optimal level. I agree with the presenter that says once we feel critical posts, we're going to be able to be performing at the level that will be acceptable. Retirement and natural attrition. Probably it will be good to have numbers so that we can be able to know what we're talking about. Because once we use general terms to talk about this thing of natural attrition and the issue of retirement in general terms without attaching numbers vis-a-vis the challenge of dealing with the structure as presented, it will be very difficult for us. And we want to be at all times, without being apologetic, make them give credit where it's due, but at the same time be critical in a constructive manner where we see some gaps. But in the absence of the correct information, a perception will become the order of the day, and it will be dangerous for us as people doing oversight. But overall in all, Chair, there is serious progress that is on, but probably they have to tailor it in a way that will suit us as a national council of provinces. And in the future, probably we're going to allocate them time so that we can be able to do justice in terms of engagement, because you know very well, Chair, that by 1 o'clock we'll be getting to other things. And within an hour, engaging with such presentation that is detailed sometimes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nyambi. Honorable Arnold.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me also thank the SABC team for their presentation. And yes, Chairperson, we can see that the SABC is on track in terms of their turnaround strategy, and there is improvement
we can see that they have met about 93% of the target, so that is commendable. But we need to get the SABC financially viable and in the right position in terms of the turnaround strategy that they must meet everything. But Chairperson, we know there was a decline in the advertising revenue. And it is well known that the COVID crisis has hit broadcasters who are dependent on advertising around the world very hard. And when it comes to the concern of jobs, there must be a push for investment in content, which also help the SABC to become viable. And we believe that it is critical that content is prioritized to boost revenue, audience, and also the mandate. Chairperson, I think we have always expressed concern when the SABC comes before us. We have always expressed our concern over their supply chain management system. And we have also heard now about the processes that are in place. But now that we are hearing now that there is a process of PFMA exemption, how are the SABC going to ensure that the SABC don't find themselves again on the wrong side? Then, Chairperson, in terms of the SABC's technology renewal plans, that remains a risk and concern when it comes to system failures. What progress has been made, if any, in that regard? Then, Chairperson, with reference to the policy and compliance in line with the SABC's own recruitment and selection processes, and we know what previously happened in terms of this process. And we have seen now that there is about 260 appointments that has already been made. So how are you going to ensure that we don't sit again with irregular appointments as was previously happening in the SABC? And then the Chairperson, what progress has been made to recoup money spent on irregular awarded contracts? Chairperson, we have also seen there is a growth of 20% on the SABC's online payments. Just in terms of your campaign, pay less than 74 cents. Your campaign, can you just give us an indication how successful the launch and the implementation of your campaign in terms of your pay less than 74% was? Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Arnolds. Honorable Mdise.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Let me start by greeting Honorable Minister and my colleagues and welcome her in our committee. Honorable Chairperson, I've got two questions. The first question, the other one, it was for this post, I'm covered, and vacant post, I'm covered. And then the second one, it's this one, though, let me put in other way of PFMA exemption. I just want to check for us, because when we do oversight over the department, we look at the PFMA, but especially when we look at the issues of the finance. So maybe the department will come up with something that a tool that will use to do oversight over them. because PFMA is the guiding tool to check whether is it valued for money, did they use their money as they supposed to do. My second question, sorry for that. On slide 32, on your presentation, you're proposing that parliamentary events funding should be reinforced. That to me is far enough. But do you have example where in other country this is in case? This is a case. The third question is, looking at your financial performance going forward, will you saying there will be a need in a near future for capital injection from National Treasury, or you'll eventually be profitable without a capital injection from National Treasury? Thank you very much, Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mdise. Honorable BB.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Apologies for not showing my video as I'm in hospital, Chairperson. Greetings to the Minister and also the board members and also officials and also colleagues. Chairperson, I've got two questions. The first one is on the slide 10 of the presentation. I've noted that under immaterial findings by the Auditor General, that in 2020, there were 74 that were recorded. And in 2021,
recording stopped.
This number increased to 79. I would like to know the reasons behind this increase. My last question, Chairperson, would be, I would like to know if there has been any money recovered as a result of the maladministration following investigation.
Recording in progress.
By the Special Investigation Unit. And if yes, how much has been recovered or would be recovered? Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mam Bibi. And we wish you a speedy recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chairperson of the board, those were the inputs from honorable members. I'm handing over back to you to deal with them. You will allocate like you have allocated in the presentation. The ball is in your court.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thanks to honorable members for their input, questions, and comments. We welcome the input and the questions, and we appreciate the feedback. I will request the team to respond to the questions. So all the questions that relate to content, the COO, Ian Plakis, will respond to that. Questions that relate to carriage fees will be handled by both Ian and Reggie, and the CFO will deal with everything that has to do with finance and audit findings, and then in that order. So I will also keep on sort of like indicating to them how we go about addressing it, but in that order. Over to you, colleagues.
Thank you, Chair, the SABC Board and Chair of the Committee. And the questions from the honourable members. I will deal with similar questions because they were from three different honourable members of the committee. The one on content, I'll deal with that. So we have got a backlog in terms of where we would want to have been in terms of acquiring content. We are in the process of catching up that, and we are going to be spending about 1.2 billion rand by the end of this current financial year to do that. Let's speak to the challenges that we have around content acquisition and both the recommissioning of content. So, and that's also speaks to the exemption we're requesting from PFMA. Right now, if we want to acquire new content, we've got to do that as if it was a commodity. So you have to go out. If you were to buy something, you go out and get 3 quotes and you take the cheapest quote if it complies with all the other requirements. That's how we are having to treat content acquisition. We know that in the creator space, that's just not possible. We come up with strategies around the various channels that we have, and we'd want to acquire content that matches those strategies. But you can't do that in the normal process in terms of advertising and then taking the cheapest quote. So that's the exemption that we are requesting, and that's what we are hoping that we'll be able to get. And so we can actually expedite making sure that we acquire the right content aligned to our strategies and obviously aligned to all our other requirements as well, which would be local content, language, BE, and so forth. So we are not deviating from our internal processes. Basically, what we're doing is just reverse engineering the process. Our current process starts with our TV, which we call video entertainment, sending out requirements. Then it will be the SEM process that will do the assessment, basically. What we want to do now is let the SEM process start off, do the valuation and accreditation and all of that with the parties, and then our video entertainment ensuring that the content that we are going to be acquiring is aligned with our strategy and everything else. Now, when it comes to recommissioning, right now the process is, because that is deemed as an evergreen contract. And you know, we have been at SCOPA to explain that as well. So literally what we have to do, if our content is successful, we've got to apply to National Treasury to renew that and recommission that with the production house that has produced that content. That can take up to months before we get that approval. As you know, within our business, and that's what our competitors are able to do, is to be very nimble. They go out there, they see what content they want, they acquire the content. If it doesn't work for them, they replace it with other content. We are not able to do that. We literally go through a process that is very tedious, and often National Treasury, because they wouldn't understand it, would come back to us and ask additional questions, and it goes on and on. And sometimes there's a delay that we can't actually then recommission the content in time so that there isn't a break in transmission. And you know what that happens. If you have a show like Uzalo, who has over 11 million viewers on a daily basis, if there's a break in that, we lose that audience. Basically, they go somewhere else, and when we come back with the next season, we don't have the same number of audiences again. So that's the challenge that we have around content acquisition, and that's what we're trying to mitigate. To stay compliant, this is literally what we have to do. We go out with an unsolicited offer and ask people to send in possible content for ourselves to consume. The last time we went done that was 3 months ago. We got over 500 responses. And because we have to be fair to everybody and within our compliance procedures, we've got to work through every single one. It takes the team 2 to 3 months just to work through that, to come up with 1, 2, or 3 content that we're going to use. That's the disadvantages that we have around that. Around the carriage fee, the question around that, that is aligned with what my colleague Philip presented around must-carry regulations, and around those, up until now, we were not able to generate any revenue from carriage agreements that we have with other broadcasters. However, that has not precluded us to conclude carriage agreements with companies outside of formal broadcasting, for example, the telcos, and we have concluded our first one with Telkom. That carriage fee is 35 million rand per year over a period of 5 years. That is the agreement, and we have concluded on that as well. Thank you, Chair. I hand over to my next colleague.
Good day, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to answer the questions. I'll be dealing with two comments and questions from Honorable Winnie Ngwenya and Honorable Andrew Arnolds. It was more of a comment than a question. So the first question was in connection with TV licenses, and the question was how many households are compliant or paying their TV licenses. Currently, there's 1.6 million households that are compliant. The full number is 1.694210 for the record. And the total number of households that are in our books come to 10.2 million households. So effectively, we've got 16% of households that are compliant. And also about 88% of our revenue from a collection perspective comes from households. So it's important to increase that number. So that's TV licenses. Absolutely, Honorable Andrew Arnolds. The market was certainly under pressure during this period for myriad of reasons, COVID, as well as the social unrest in July, which obviously also has a domino effect, because when real estate has been impacted, advertisers withdraw their spend and their campaigns because they don't have stock, and outlets have come to absolute standstill. And that effectively impacted our revenue significantly as well. I think there is an opportunity within the government segment, however, for more spend, in that currently as a contributor of the budget or target of the budget, contribution is 10%. Government segment is only carrying 10% as a budget of my total revenue aspirations. Of the 5 billion rand aspirations, are only carrying 10%, which is about 500 million rand. And within that, the government segment is lagging behind and inconsistent in the manner in which it consumes products. And obviously, given the potential for partnerships and collaboration within the sector, it should represent one of the lowest hanging fruits, be it the health department, be it transport, depending on the campaigns that are on board. Had these numbers, in my opinion, if these numbers were met and exceeded significantly, this would indeed certainly offset some of the calls to sponsor or subsidize certain things within the business. But it's important that the various governments look at SABC favorably. We have the reach, so it's not a garage purchase. We certainly have the best reach in the country, with 75% listenership from a radio perspective, and up to, in some instances, 80%, depending on the targeted markets, from a TV perspective. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I just want to answer the question around the technology. I think it came from Honorable Arnolds. So what we are doing with our technology renewal plans, we really have an aggressive program, and we have already started that. The organization has identified the top 20 projects, and we've got a fine balance between revenue generating projects as well as business continuity projects. And the whole organization is geared around the top 20 projects, and we're all working towards that. I'm also responsible for regions, and I note the comment, and so for future presentations, we certainly will have the regional component attached to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I will now take over the questions assigned to myself. Honourable Ngwenya, there has been no request submitted to National Treasury for a recapitalisation, and connected to Honourable Madise's question around the same topic, we have no intention at this time to request for it as well in the future. We are on our way to return to financial sustainability on our own steam. The critical factor to ensure that this is indeed on our own steam would be the alignment of the regulatory and legislative environment to our business environment. Therefore, we do not believe that recap will be necessary in the near future again. On audit-related matters, so before you get to a clean audit, you first need to get to an unqualified audit. Now, there are three types of findings you typically get from the AG. Annexure A, which results in a qualification. Annexure B, which is important but does not result in a qualification. Then you get Annexure C, which is effectively housekeeping matters. And we do not yet have Annexure C findings. To be able to get to a clean audit, you need to get only Annexure C type findings. So what our journey has been in the last 3 years, as the audit team and business have been able to shift their attention from Annexure A things, the critical, important, technical, complex matters that sees a adverse or qualified with findings or worse, a disclaimer opinion. We have been getting to the next layer of information and financial controls and other controls and the internal environment in the organization. So right now, the only finding that remain on A is the opening balances of the irregular expenditure register, and I will elaborate on that in a second. If you then get to Annexure B and the slight increase, it is perfectly expected and acceptable as both the Auditor General and ourselves start getting to the next layer of information and their controls. This specific year, we have also had a little bit of disruption because of the movement in personnel as we were busy consulting on implementing, rolling out the target operating model and everything that went with that. But those are the kind of findings that are typically very easy to address. And now that we have settled down, those should not be the kind of findings one would expect to increase again. What one would now have to see is how those Annexure C housekeeping stuff joins the report probably in this financial year. So in this one that we're currently in 2022, how we are going to address the one remaining finding that results in a qualified opinion, I did speak to it, but it is about how we ensure completeness of the irregular expenditure register. We have approximately 4 billion rands worth of payments in a year. We managed to test all 4 billion in the year 2021. We are currently 60% in testing the value of payments in the 2020 and 2019 financial years. We have also already done a Q1 of the current financial year. So once you are able to confirm that you have tested in terms of a policy and procedure that we have developed is in place, the full quantum of your payment universe, the AG is happy to say your completeness is no longer the issue. And that is where we are moving towards. You should, as you're busy cleaning up, similar to audit findings, however, to expect slight increases in the balance because you are now testing your whole universe of payments for what could possibly have been irregular. So when are we aiming for a clean audit? It would be in the 2023 financial year. The goal for this financial year, 2022, is to get an unqualified opinion, subject to us being able to confirm emphatically that we've addressed the completeness of our register opening balances. And we have a specific project that is running to achieve that. So after I hope I've addressed Honourable Nyambi's question around the kind of actions, there's a team solely dedicated to this. There are specific project milestones in place. There are specific oversights in place. We have the support from our Audit and Risk Committee and our board as they help us monitor that and the execution of that project. Just on the PFMA exemption request, to add on to what the CIO explained, it's not exemption from the Act in totality at all. It's exemption from a very specific section of the Act for a very specific part of our business, content only. So goods and services and everything else in the PFMA will remain applicable. And as you engage with National Treasury and in fact the Minister himself to be able to motivate for your exemption, you must illustrate how you honor the 5 SCM principles in the Constitution. So there's lots of work and evidence being provided that even as we request for specific reasons to be exempted, these are the measures that are in place that we to ensure that we don't go back to the past specifically, but also that we keep on honoring the 5 SCM specific principles as we go on. Honourable Arnolds, in terms of money spent on regularly awarded contracts and recoupment thereof, so let me first just say that in probably more than 90%, I would dare say more than 95% of the cases of irregular expenditure incurred, goods and services were received. So there's no recoupment necessary, but an important step of the condonation process is to ensure that you got value. So this team that we've put in place, recently supplemented by investigators, part of their activities is to ensure that we received value for what we paid for. Should we not have received that, then the next steps process in terms of recovery will kick in. We continue to work with the SIU on irregularly awarded contracts in the 2017 year and in terms of their investigations they did. And those recoupment processes will unfold and is unfolding. And should the court processes conclude, then a recoupment will take place. Then I think that I have touched on Honourable Bibi's question around audit findings from 74 to 79. I hope I've touched on her comment as well on money recovered and maladministration and the SIU portion. And I think Chair of the committee, I'll hand over to our GEHR for the HR related questions. Thank
you. Thank you very much, CFO. Specific to the issue of moratorium, clarity regarding that, the period of the recruitment moratorium, it is the period preceding Section 189. That is June 2020, and until 31st March 2021, there was a recruitment moratorium. This was both morally correct and a legislative imperative, since there was contemplation of possible retrenchment of about 600 employees. Those are employees that were occupying positions that were either deemed surplus and or redundant. There were many contributing factors to people not taking those positions, and amongst those was lack of qualification, to some employees not willing to move to less junior available alternative positions, and some protection of retirement fund value, since SABC it's still on defined benefit instead of contribution. The unintended consequence, amongst others, was an increase in the number of employees that opted for VSP, voluntary service package, versus, in fact, employees that were forced to retrench. For the record, in fact, employees that faced forced retrenchment were significantly less than those who took VSP. To be precise, there were 275 who were forced retrenched. Those who took VSP occupy positions which the business still needed them going forward. but they were on new terms, new positions, and a different level. Then the transition took place and we moved into the new structure effective 1st of April. When we transitioned, the total positions in the structure were 2,684. That is according to the new structure. And of those, we then had vacancies. And those vacancies, 440 vacancies that we reported to date, or as at September, 290 appointments were concluded. If roughly we were to say mathematically, it would be 440 minus 290. It means we are left with 150 vacancies. Typically, this is what we call healthy mobility of about 5% turnover. This is usually happening over a year under normal circumstances. The unique thing in this case is the 440 happened at the same time when we transitioned to the new structure. And yes, the consequence thereof, and it is for that reason we called bulk recruitment. They happen at the same time. But we anticipated those. To avoid a decline in performance, we had mitigation plans because we're even thinking the worst case scenario. We had risk plans in place. They included, amongst other things, securing the services of independent contractors, fixed term contract between 1 month to 12 months, depending on what was the operational needs, the complexity, and the shortage of that skill. This cohort of people that were used as part of the mitigation plan consists of people that were highly experienced, and competent, some who used to work for SABC for many years. So I can assure members that there is no need to be concerned about a possible decline of performance, but obviously for the sake of conducive working environment and creating a high performance culture, we would want to fill all those positions. In closing, acting is also an opportunity for those in junior positions to get the opportunity to grow. So in some positions, we allowed acting. Progress with regard to some of the positions that members mentioned specifically, regional operations manager and or business managers, I can confirm that of almost, in total, we have 8 in all, either 8 business managers and or 8 regional managers. In both, we are left with 1 or 2 vacancies, and some of us are in process. We will close the year with almost all being filled. We'll be left with plus or minus 1 or 2. I hope that answers the question and the concern on vacancies and performance. Thank you very much.
Board Chair, are we done?
Thank you, Chair. I will be dealing with the regulatory questions that were raised by Honorable Nyambi and also Honorable Modise. With regard to the timeframes, I think there was a question raised by Honorable Nyambi around the timeframes of when all these regulatory and legislative challenges are going to be resolved. I think in essence, that was a question. I need to maybe clarify that these are public processes. For legislation to change is a public process. For a regulation to change is a public process. Therefore, we are so much dependent on the workings of the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, for example. We have raised a number of challenges that actually relates to policy. We have made submission as the SABC. For an example, we have made a submission on the 9th of June. We have had hearings also with respect to a white paper with the department, and we are waiting for them in terms of how they take the process forward with regard to submissions that were made, as also other parties did. There was also a bill, the broadcasting bill. We have made submissions to the department. For example, we launched our submission on the 31st of August with the department, and we subsequently also in October, made a proposal of the bill of what we think the SABC, how the SABC, provisions should be changed from the Broadcasting Act. So the process is much more dependent way going forward from the department. We have also will be engaging with them as we have a joint strategy session with them that is forthcoming, where the priorities are going to be looked at by the department. They've requested us to make an input and which is going to be made in that regard. Then there are regulations that have been mentioned here, such as your mass carry regulations. That is also run by ICASA. ICASA will issue, for example, a publication to say interested parties must actually make a submission. As the SABC, we have made our submission in that respect. For example, we made our submission as early as 29th of July, and we are waiting for ICASA to come back and say this is their finding and this is where they want to go forward. With respect to sports, also to use that as an example, ICASA has actually finalized the regulations, but we are not happy with those regulations. And the SABC is currently weighing its options and looking in terms of how it is prejudiced, and an action in that regard will be executed. With respect to, for example, Centec, we have raised the matter with the Competition Commission, which has come back to us and said they are going to mediate between the two parties, and we're waiting to take the process forward with them. So these processes are more external dependent of the SABC, and we have done all we could from our side in terms of making submission and ensuring that our position is advanced through to the relevant authorities that are dealing with the matters. There was also an issue around parliamentary channel and whether this is publicly funded or ring-fenced. I must say that this is a very common phenomenon. If you check at BBC Parliament, you check at the CBC, which is the Canadian Broadcasting Parliamentary Network, the government grants that are given, especially to CBC as an example, which actually has influenced even the legislation of the Broadcasting Act in this country, which was more tailored around the Broadcasting Act in Canada. They receive grants as public part of funding their public service mandate, because parliamentary channel is a free-to-air channel and it's meant to advance all those public mandate objectives. So they are receiving grants, they are receiving funding in terms of parliamentary channels. And maybe I should leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Ndutuzelo Vanara. Mine is really to deal with the question around the monies recovered subsequent to the SIU investigations. Perhaps to assist the honorable members of the committee comprehend properly what I am to say below in answering this question, is that subsequent to these investigations, a number of actions, activities needed to unfold, as these irregularities would have had to speak to a number of consequence management for those who were involved. There were monies to be recovered, but also the contracts that were irregularly awarded needed to be dealt with. And all of these, we could not take the law into our own hands. As we are a law-abiding corporation, we needed to ensure that we follow the prescripts of the law to the letter. By way of feedback on the monies to be recovered, we are standing at just over 20 million through a number of contributory instances. To name a few, there would have been monies misappropriated related to the bursary scheme in excess of 500,000. There is a success fee matter to the tune of just over 11 million, and 1,200,000 for legal fees paid by the corporation for personal legal challenges against one of the officials or the then officials of the corporation. These processes involve the courts through litigation, and these processes assume a lifespan of their own. There are a number of dynamics, and I can assure the honorable members that none of these cases were not defended. They were all defended, which has got a direct impact on the turnaround time in terms of finalizing these matters. All of these matters are at a very advanced stage. By that I mean we are almost nearing the actual hearing of these in courts of laws. The one matter has since been finalized, and that relates to the legal fees that were paid by the corporation for an individual legal battles. We are sitting with a court order by the Supreme Court of Appeal, so you would realize that these matters are vehemently defended to the extent that where there's judgments of the high courts, they themselves are challenged, and we are taken to the next court. In this instance, this matter had gone to the Supreme Court of Appeal, which confirmed the order of the High Court in favor of the SABC. We have entered into a repayment arrangement with the individual concerned, who is currently repaying this 1.2 million in monthly installments of 100,000 effective September this year. The issue of the success fee and the other matters are still outstanding, as I indicate. However, what we have done as the corporation to protect the interest of the corporation so that when these matters are finalized by courts of law, we don't sit with hollow judgments, judgments where people would have used their monies, disposed of assets, and we have nothing to show except a court order. To avoid that situation, we moved swiftly to first engage with the pension fund of the SABC to have them exercise a discretion in favor of them not paying the pension interest of the affected individuals pending the outcome of these recovery proceedings. Initially, we didn't get the consent, and we were forced to go to court to go get a court order to that effect. We were successful in that regard, and we have obtained the relevant court orders that prohibited the pension fund from making or paying out the pension benefits of these individuals pending the completion of these proceedings, which makes us or puts us in good stead to still recover these monies from the affected individuals. The last point I want to deal with inherent to this is the issue of the contracts that had been declared invalid. Out of the 100%, we have gone to court again because we could not take the law into ourselves to have those contracts reviewed, set aside, declared unlawful. And again, there is a significance attached to that. One, once we succeed in that regard, which we have succeeded in all but one of those cases, is the organization is spared spending that was not subjected to the 5 elements of procurement. especially from a cost-benefit analysis. Because the courts, when they find and set aside those contracts, the corporation is only liable to the operational expenses that were incurred by the service provider in delivering a service where the services have been rendered. One, we are guaranteed that the service has been rendered. Number two, we are not paying more than we were supposed to pay for that. In that the company concerned is not entitled to make a profit out of that transaction. And that has saved the corporation a lot of money as a result of irregularly awarded contracts. There's only two matters that are outstanding. The one relates to the irregularly awarded Mbombela lease agreement in Mpumalanga, where again, part of what we're seeking to recover is the amount of money the corporation paid for a floor that was rented but never used, for which there was no justification for that. So there has been a great deal of success, both from a monetary point of view, but also from reinvigorating our governance processes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, colleagues, and thank you to honorable members and the honorable chair. And that basically concludes the responses from the SABC team. Over to you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Board Chair and your team for the responses. I can just check if there are follow-up questions from members. Any follow-up? I don't see any hands. If there are no follow-up, we want to... Oh, Honorable Nyambi and Honorable Ngwenya.
Thank you.
I start with Honorable Ngwenya and then Honorable Nyambi. Honorable Ngwenya.
Yes, Chair. Thanks, Chairperson. My follow-up question for second round, Chair. One is on government grant. I want to know what is the contribution of the government grant towards SABC total revenue. The second follow-up question, Chair, is on sports rights. Is sports right still a loss-making element for SABC to achieve a public mandate? The third and lastly, Chair, is on SABC board. I want to know when is the term of the current board coming to an end? I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable Nyambi.
Thanks, Chair. No, let me thank the team for being detailed in responding to our questions. It's in relation to just one question, the legislation that they are supposed to bring to us so that they can be able to be assisted to be sustainable. So the response was for them to indicate when can we expect. When I was talking about time frame, I was merely asking them to confirm when can we expect such legislation, because we don't want to come back towards the end of our term and still talk about same issues. We are very clear about what we're supposed to be doing. We understand that we don't expect them to tell us about the completion because it's us that will be dealing with the public participation. But at the same time, working with the department, they know when are they going to conclude their process so that cabinet can approve and then we can have them. So that come next year, we're not going to be having same stuff being presented to us and nothing has been done and we don't know where the process is stalled. That was my question. But otherwise, they've been detailed in all the other questions, and I commend them for that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Board Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Maybe I can start with the question that is directed to the board about our term of office. We took office in 2017, October. Our term is coming to an end next year, October. So we are left with exactly 11 months in our term of office. The question that relates to the first question that was asked by Honorable Ngwenya, I'm going to ask CFO to respond, and then maybe the department also can assist with the response on the process of the regulatory reforms. And then Ian can assist with the question that relates to sports rights, if it's still a loss-making part of the SABC, in that order. Thank you.
Thank you, my board chair, honorable chair, honorable Ngwenya's question around the contribution of government grants to our revenue. It's approximately 2%. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. In terms of the question around the sports rights from Honorable Ngwenya, as a business, a complete business, sport is not profitable at the moment, and that's because of agreements that's currently in place that have been signed many years ago at quite excessive prices, and our inability to exploit that on just one channel on linear, for example. We have launched a new sport channel, and with that we have the ability now to have 24/7, and we can exploit the current sports rights that we have and new ones. So all our new properties that we have acquired goes through a very rigorous business case process, and we do not proceed with that if it is not profitable. So all of our new stuff has been profitable, and we certainly are projecting that the business will become profitable. However, if we take into account those contracts that I mentioned, it will take a bit slightly longer. But if we discount that out of the equation and we just look at all the new stuff that we are doing since our new target operating model, then yes, sport is a profitable business. Thank you, Chair.
Are we done, Board Chair?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Yes, we are done. There was a question around that was asked about the process of the reforms. I was hoping the department can assist to share with honorable members that process and the timelines.
Acting DG. Okay. I think if they are unable to respond, we have made an undertaking to the minister that any issues that relates to her department will be able to relate to her so that she can give responses in writing to the committee. Let me take this opportunity to thank you, Chairperson of the Board, Group CEO, together with your team, for coming to us and making a very comprehensive presentation. We also want to really appreciate the progress that the marked improvement that we see in terms of different areas, in terms of performance, as well as issues around financial sustainability. As you have heard, the committee has indicated that we might want to have another session with you, looking at the provincial footprint of the SABC and issues around different provinces. There were issues by the committee around the acting positions that needed to be filled. The last key issue is the issue around legislative changes that you require board chair together with your group CEO that will assist to make the SABC to be self-sustainable. They are very key when we look at them, and also key in order to make improvements in the SABC sustainability. So we will engage with the department and the minister so that we can look at those key issues. We are ready as the NCOP Select Committee that whenever those issues are brought to our attention, we'll engage with them with the view to assist the board together with the SABC to make them to be self-sustainable. We want the marked improvement in relation to audit to also continue so that all the issues that were raised by the Auditor General are attended to. In those few words, we want to thank you, Chairperson. We can release you, Board Chair, and your team.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable members, I think from our side, we can look at the minutes of the previous meeting just quickly before we go to another meeting. Committee Secretary, the minutes.
Chair, can the members see the screen, Chair? The minutes of the 8th of September?
We received them last time, not so.
Okay. So do you want me to go through it, or do you want me to check the minutes, Chair, or do you just want to click for a mover and a seconder for the minutes?
We can present them to the committee if there are any inputs or changes the members want to make in relation to the minutes.
Chair, thank you very much. We have received the minutes on time, and myself, I went through to those minutes. This is the reflection of what we have discussed last time. So I move for the adoption of the minutes.
Honorable Modise moves for the adoption of the minutes. Any second?
Chair Lindwe PP, second, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we still have other minutes, Committee Secretary?
Yes, Chair. The next set of minutes that we have is last week, Wednesday, which is the 10th of November.
Yes, which we have also received. Do we have any corrections, honorable members, to the minutes? If none, can one member move for the adoption of the minutes?
Chairperson, Lindwe BP move for the adoption of the minutes.
Honorable BB moves. Any secondment? Any second?
I was not part of the meeting.
Oh, you were not part of the meeting. You were in Glasgow. Any secondment? Honorable Ngwenya.
She was in Nigeria.
If we can maybe get, in terms of the members
Chairperson, I was not part of the meeting. I was on the
part of the meeting now.
Chair, in terms of the members present, it was Honourable Bibi who's already proposed to move for the adoption of the minutes, and then we've also got Honourable Arnolds and Honourable Makausi.
I second the minutes, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Arnold. Everybody was outside. Another one in Nigeria, another one in Glasgow. Thank you very much. We have got an announcement. There is a committee secretary. Can you put that announcement? There is a virtual session. Committee secretary, that announcement of the from the
Chair. Yes, Chair, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to flight it now quickly. I'm just trying to find it quickly. I'll just put it in a second. It's the 16th International Internet Governance Forum meeting that's taking place from the 6th to the 10th of December, Chair. There's been this decision has been taken by the chairperson of the NCOP that members will attend virtually. So we just need an indication from members as to who would like to attend, because I see the deadline for registration is actually this coming Saturday, the 20th of November. So we will immediately after this meeting, we will send members the information, including the program. But we just need to receive, if immediately after this meeting, members can just give an indication as to who will be interested to attend.
Yeah, in the chat group, they can put an indication whether they are available to attend, so that we can then register the members that are attending. Thank you very much, honorable members. We must also indicate that I received information from the committee section that Ayanda has been appointed to be our committee secretary until March 2022. We congratulate her on her appointment. But today she's in the meeting. She just said she's having an infection. That is why Madia is still assisting us in this regard. We want to welcome her to our committee. Thank you very much, honorable members. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mama Bibi, be well, please. Siyakhulekela mntakwethu uzoba ngcono mfethu.
Bangcono mfethu.
Iba ngcono mama.
Ngiyabonga mama. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Vuka lo ibethweni asufuni la esibhedlela asufuni lapha lesibhedlela mama.
Sifuna ekhaya.
Sifuni makhaya.